Hey guys, welcome to the Beyond Sunday podcast. We're decided to take the conversation deeper beyond Sunday. In this episode, we get to be together, have this conversation from this last Sunday. But before we dive into the conversation, take a look at this video. Welcome back. As we dive into the conversation, Sheree, what's the big idea from this last Sunday and some of the texts that we were diving into?
Yeah, this week, so we're talking about hope this week. And so on this journey, so we're walking with Jesus, this journey of formation, that there's hope for the destination. So sometimes there's twists and turns, and the journey is maybe not what we expect, or there's places where yeah, it's hard, and we can have a temptation to lose sight or a tendency to lose sight. So we got to talk today about hope. And so I was in a lot of places today.
Wait. No surprise face.
You were too.
Okay.
Okay, don't be rude, but there wasn't like a one text.
Well, one text on hope.
No. Sometimes we like, okay, anyways, I was in a number of different places. Job, Luke.
Wow, you went to Job for hope.
Yeah.
Nice.
Actually, it's so great. Were you there?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So what the heck? Yeah, we started there because I felt like if anybody in the history of humanity has a reason to have lost hope, it would be Job. And yet, tucked into the middle of that book, we find him calling out this reminder of hope that's like, so there's something about even the way that he says, he talks about like, I know my Redeemer lives and I will see God, and like how overjoyed he'll be at this thought. And there's something that like that comes from a deep place of like, this is woven into him, like this is deeply within him, because his circumstances, it doesn't make sense for that to be what he's offering.
Yeah, in no way would he be able to call attention to something in his life that would provide hope. He's so deeply woven into, okay, if this is what I'm navigating, I do believe that there's a God. Hence, the whole kind of the structure and format of how the book of Job flows, in his friends, in his wife, and those that come into his presence in the midst of this tragedy, that in some ways they help and comfort, in other ways they stand in contrast to Job entering deeper into a relationship with God. That then we see in this chapter in Job 19, that, like you said, woven into, and in the midst of this story, in the middle of it, is this like, and yet my Redeemer lives. Right? Or I proclaim my Redeemer lives. The call back to like, yeah, deeply woven into what he knows to be true about God, in spite of the midst of the circumstances that exist in life.
Yeah. So that's where we started. And then yeah, we were in a few different places. And I think for me, we've been following the RCL for, I don't actually know how long now, more than a year.
Well, to everyone who's listening, we're coming to the end of season 1 of the Beyond Sunday podcast.
Yeah, right.
And eventually we'll launch into season 2.
Yeah, in just a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Then, right. Yeah. So so the RCL, the Revised Common Lectionary, essentially every week we're looking at a grouping of scriptures, and kind of asking the question, like, God, what is it that you have in these for us? And sometimes it's one particular text, sometimes for a season we're kind of in one book, or sometimes it's a mixture. But this week for me, there were multiple of those that felt like just a really obvious hope, reminders of hope in different
Mhm.
spaces that we may find ourselves. And so that's kind of where I was today, was like um, taking those texts and asking the question of like, where do we see what's the issue in this space that's relatable for us today? So whether it's like, hey, everything is in ruins, or there's death around me, or there's fear and confusion, like those are all things that we can find ourselves in those places. And so what does the text remind us about hope in those things and in those places?
Yeah, and especially in the text that we have in the Revised Common Lectionary and in relation to the journey of our life, the twists, the turns, the detours, the things that our life takes on, even the here and now, that those texts actually speak into, whether it's the hope in the midst of devastation and loss, the
Mhm.
hope in the fear and the confusion that exists, the hope in the, I mean, whether there's rubble or destruction that
Mhm.
has, we can kind of see around us, that in this way, these texts, these scriptures, remind us that we, because of where our hope uh, exists, that it's not in the only in the here and now, but it's hope in the eternal.
Mhm.
And then the one who gives me access to the eternal, the one who invites me into the eternal, the
Mhm.
one that in Jesus, who has come to rescue and seek and save the lost, that in him, that's where if I place my hope there, and knowing that it isn't just in the here and now. It's not that we're denying the here and now, and the present is something like we don't have to worry about, but it's both the here and now and the not yet.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and that was kind of even I think this reminder of like, as we talk about there being hope in the destination. So we know that God is in the process of putting the world back together, and that there's this promise of this beautiful day where everything is restored and renewed, and we have this new heaven and this new earth, and um, there's like that's this beautiful promise, this beautiful destination. I used the analogy today because we were gone last week and we were in the mountains. We were in Mount Hood, right, or at Mount Hood, and um, at one point, or I guess even throughout our time there, at any given time, you may or may not be able to see the mountain. It's there. The mountain hasn't moved, the mountain hasn't changed. But depending on where I'm located, even as we were walking, we're hiking around a lake, and you can see the mountain like so clearly in this one spot, and you go just a little ways, and all of a sudden you're like, can't even see the mountain, don't even know where it is. Mountain didn't move, mountain didn't change. But as there's twists and turns, right? And so this idea of like that's true in the journey of life, like that there are seasons where there's twists and there's turns, or there's clouds and there's fog, or there's whatever, that it's easy to like, I can't even see this promise anymore. But the beauty about this walking with Jesus, this journey of formation, is like in those moments, I actually have a living hope right here with me,
Hmm.
right next to me, to say, hey, I know you can't see it right now, but don't forget. The
Hmm.
mountain's right there. Like, don't forget, it hasn't changed. It hasn't moved. Your position has, your perspective has, something's in the way,
Yeah,
whatever.
clouded.
But um Jesus is like, but I'm with you, and
Hmm.
I'm the hope. And that we see in all of these scriptures, I think, like in Haggai, they're like this reminder of like, I know it looks bad right now. Everything is in ruins. It's not what has been. It's not what you have experienced. And he's like, but I'm with you. I am with you. And here's what I will do. And so it's this reminder, even then, of like, I'm a God who's with you, who's for you. It's time to get back to work.
Hmm.
I'm with you. And I just, in all of those spaces, this reminder, like, you might not be able to see, but I'm with you.
Yeah, and that brings, I mean, it brings to mind the thought of like hope isn't um, something that uh, there's no action to it, but there
Hmm.
in hoping in
Hmm.
God that there is an action to, and we see that in Haggai of be strong, repeat it, be strong, be strong. I am with you.
Yeah.
Do the work. Do not fear. I will fill this place
Yeah.
with
And
my presence.
the Lord of Heaven's armies. That's the other repeated phrase, which is like this reminder of like there's so much, there's so many names that God could use to refer to himself and does in other places. But that reminder in that even just small passage
Hmm.
over and over again, that hit me even as I was preaching this morning was like this refrain of like the Lord of Heaven's armies. And there's so much power in that. So when he's like, be strong, get back to work, it's like you can get back to work because the Lord of Heaven's armies
Yeah.
is with you.
And that was the sense I had at the end of service on Sunday was there may be some who struggle to like, I don't have the hope
Mhm.
in my life. I'm burdened by the situation going on. I'm burdened by brokenness that I'm surrounded by. I'm burdened by the trial or suffering that's taking place. I don't have the hope.
Mhm.
So how do I get this hope?
Mhm.
How do I um, proclaim like Job does, my Redeemer lives,
Yeah.
and to proclaim it in such a way that it's not a question,
Mhm.
but a statement, a
Mhm.
proclamation. And that was a sense on Sunday was there are those that maybe are sitting in the place that Job is sitting and are not able to say my Redeemer lives, but they're saying that phrase, but it's being asked as a question,
Mhm.
not as a proclamation or like this is who God is. It's like my Redeemer lives
Right.
in this.
Yeah. Where?
Where
Mhm.
where are you?
Mhm. Yeah. Which then I guess so part of that for me that came up again even as I was preaching because this is such an echo in the last month, 2 months, this
Hmm.
remember, right? So I even like Isaiah 40, we've talked about it on the podcast multiple times in different spaces now. And then even having, I know we both played a clip from our podcast episode with Pastor Zoe that'll drop shortly. Um, but this reminder of like, don't you dare forget who I am. So in those moments and in those places where you're like, where God, where like here, are you sure? Don't you dare forget.
Hmm.
Don't you dare forget who I am and what I've done. Have you not seen? Have you not
Hmm.
heard? And so there's this consistent echo right now in the last couple months of like, we have to tell the stories. And
Hmm.
Pastor Zoe talked about it, the testimonies, the places that we've seen God already show up, and that's true in scripture, and we have all of those, and so we can tell those stories. But it's
Yes.
also true, and this is what I
And then you're
was looking out
yeah.
at the church today, and this is what I called out was like, that's true in this room.
Hmm.
There's stories, every single one of us that's in this space. Um, we've seen God work and we've
Hmm.
seen God move, and we need to tell those stories so that on the days when, yeah, we've got people around us or us ourselves are looking around and we're like, everything is in ruins. Are you sure you're here, God? Or it's like not just ruins, but death. What I thought was going to be isn't. It's dead and gone. So here, God,
Hmm.
the fear and the confusion, like I don't know what tomorrow looks like actually.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
And so we need those reminders that in the past we've asked those questions. Others have asked those questions. They've been in those same spaces and they've asked, like, where are you, God? Are you here? And the answer has been yes every time.
Right.
Um, so I don't know, today going into preaching, um, I was like, yeah, hope, this is good. Like, this is good stuff. And in the midst of that, just this, I sensed this power, the power authority piece of like, don't you forget.
Hmm.
And it's actually maybe that's some of that too, is that you just said like hope is not it's not something I have to do, but it's the power of the spirit that lives in me, right? Like God did not give me a spirit of fear or of timidity, but this powerful spirit of like, yes, the God of heaven's armies is with me
Yeah.
in the ruins, in the death, in the fear, in the confusion. That's where hope comes from.
Yes. And I kind of walk faithfully into it. And whether or not things work out and my favorite things work out, not in my favorable way, the ways that I want it to work out,
Mhm.
I can trust that God is in the midst of all of it.
Mhm.
And my hope doesn't come in the things that in the ways that I want it to look,
Yeah.
but it comes in from a God who is faithful, faithful to see me where I'm at, faithful to say, I've got good things for you.
Mhm.
You might in the midst of suffering and hurt and pain, um, for a time or a season, I don't know however long they go, but he is not far off.
Yeah.
He's very near, he's very present. So where is it that we're placing our hope? Where is it we're fixing our eyes?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and too often I myself can find myself desiring results in such a way that like, well, obviously that makes sense to me if it would go that way. And if
Hmm.
it doesn't, and I put my hope in that thing, not
Hmm.
in Jesus, not in God, but I put it in that result,
Yeah.
then if it doesn't take place, then I'm what I'm undone.
Hmm.
I'm sitting in sackcloth and ashes and
Hmm.
wondering, like asking the my Redeemer lives as a question instead of a proclamation and
Right.
a statement of God's goodness, and He will reign.
Yeah. And then you're struggling to hope again because
Yeah,
the last thing you put your hope in
yeah,
fails.
yeah.
Yeah.
So as we wrapped up this podcast episode, what is the Kairos that God is speaking to you? What's He inviting you into, and how is He inviting you to respond?
Yeah. A lot of times Kairos feels challenging in a and I don't necessarily just mean like it feels really hard, but it feels like a right. So if this is a moment where God's trying to get my attention and maybe readjust my course a little bit, sometimes a lot of times that feels like, oh, okay, here we go. Today, this sense of comfort
Mm,
because as I'm talking about like, yeah, hope in the ruins where you're something you thought was going to be isn't, or where something that once was no longer looks like it was. And so navigating in a season right now where I'm navigating that in a really real way, with some relational stuff that's like, okay, this thing that once existed, that once was it doesn't look like it did before. Um, and there was this reminder, even in the moment that just felt like, don't lose hope.
mm,
And I don't know what that relationship will look like. And I don't know, like you're just talking about, like, I know what I'd love to exist in my head. And I could even tell you how to get there.
yeah, God,
Right.
I got a plan.
There you go, God. I put it together for you. But I did sense this reminder of like, don't lose hope. Don't lose hope that it's that don't you dare forget that I'm a God who restores and a God who reconciles.
Mhm.
Um, and so they're in that, yeah, that just felt like a comforting, like, don't you forget.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. For me, we were a month ago at PNA Connect, and on Sunday, Pastor Ryan was preaching out of First Peter
Mhm.
on hope,
Mhm.
uh, and that has been replaying in my mind from that Sunday and from his message. And one of the things that has stuck with me from that is that hope is holy.
Mhm.
One of the things we talked about last week in our message and through the Revised Common Lectionary was that there's an invitation, or I was sensing an invitation to um, practice holiness. Like
Mhm.
holiness is practice.
Mhm.
And in this regard, I was drawn to hope as a practice that
Mhm.
is holy.
Mhm.
And if I'm to walk this out, to live this kind of way, that it would be not in my own strength to have this kind of hope, but in my surrender, pursuit, practice
Mhm.
with God, that this sort of orienting myself before God would be a holy
Mhm.
practice that in spaces that seem hopeless, in spaces that seem,
Mhm.
why would I offer any more of my time? Why would I offer
Mhm.
any more of my effort? Why
Mhm.
wouldn't I just cut the rope and move on if God's calling me to remain in a place to say, no, I am calling or desiring this world to be redeemed, and I'm calling you into this place,
Mhm.
so don't lose hope.
Mhm.
Like in
Like that's an act of holiness.
right.
Yeah,
And
that's good.
in that same kind of way of like, don't forget,
Don't you dare forget.
this is what I'm about.
Mhm.
So don't. back away from that.
Mm.
One of the things Devin offered when we entered into worship this morning was this idea of um, indifference
Mm.
uh, to whether it's faith or people or whatever, and things don't go well. Like, are there times where uh, indifference is disobedience?
Mm.
And like, yeah, it's all going to fall apart anyway, or it's like it's
Exactly.
too far gone to worry about. Or do I actually have the eyes and the heart of Christ
Mm-hmm.
in those moments that maybe indifference has been seeded
Yeah.
to uproot that and say, no, the heart of God and the eyes of Christ
Mm-hmm.
say that this thing is that God desires to redeem.
Yeah. It's the God of the living, not the dead.
God of the living, not the
That's
dead.
Luke 20.
Yeah. And so we entered into worship this morning with that kind of resonating in my head and heart, that then drew me back to this sermon a month ago in Spokane about hope being holy. And boy, I think there's an invitation in there for me to practice
hope
in this kind of way, and especially, I guess, in regards to the indifference piece. Like, too often I can find myself moving in that direction, which I don't think is God in any way, right? That's it. I prayed even this morning in the prayer time of like, there's no expanse that's too far apart for God. And if I believe that to be true, then indifference sits on this other side that I'm actually, if I grab hold of that, that's not where God's at.
Yeah, it doesn't look like Jesus.
Right. He's spanning the entire chasm, saying that east and west, none of the depth, none of that is too far for me to reach. And so hope is that place. Can I tend to it? Can I hold it? Can I foster it in a kind of way that brings life into things that were once dead? Right? If God's the God of the living, not the dead, then in that moment in that space of hope, does that breathe new life into those spaces, even in myself, to whether it's things that are going on in my life or things that exist around me.
That's good.
Yeah. Good. Well, guys, thanks for being with us on this episode. We hope and pray that your conversations are going beyond Sunday. So we'll see you next time.